Hi, today I'm going to read you a story called The Singer and the Scientist. It's a story that's written by Lisa Rose and illustrated by Isabel Munoz. And I really like this story because I never knew about the special friendship that these two very famous people had. I have, of course, heard many stories about Albert Einstein himself, and I've read stories about Marian Anderson, but I didn't know they were friends until reading this story. So I hope that you enjoy it as well. The Singer and the Scientist. 1937, McCarter Theater, Princeton, New Jersey. Peeling back the velvet curtain, Marian peeked out at the chatting audience. Furs, diamonds, and pearls dazzled from the women, and perfectly tailored suits blazed on the men. Marian knew how rare it was for a white audience of this size to come hear an African American woman sing. Marian's heart did its nervous thump, thump, thumpity thump. Her stomach twisted. How would she be able to? A stagehand signaled that it was time for her to begin. Taking a deep breath, Marian swept onto the stage. The lights in the theater dimmed. The audience hushed. The spotlight shone on Marian. She could not turn back. Nodding to the pianist, she began softly singing the melody, almost like a whisper. A man in the front row had wild white hair and wrinkled clothes. His foot tapped perfectly to the rhythm of her song. The rest of the audience swayed to the music. As she sang, each crescendo swept her fears further away. All eyes in the audience were on her. All ears in the audience were tuned in to her. Holding the last note, she wished that the night would never end. The piano stopped. Gracefully, Marian bowed, and the audience erupted in applause. In the wings of the stage, Marian's body sagged with exhaustion. It had been a very long day. She wanted only to take off her shoes and rest. Picking up her suitcase, she headed to the lobby. The well-dressed people mingled with one another, but not with her. Nobody came up to Marian to compliment her or to thank her or even to say hello. As so often happened, she felt invisible in the white crowd. The theater owner rushed past her. Marian had to shout for him to stop. He turned and looked annoyed as she asked him to please arrange a room for her at the nearby Nassau Inn. His voice boomed loudly as he explained that the Nassau was a whites-only hotel. All talking in the lobby ceased. Everyone looked at Marian, but not as a star, not even as a person. The room began to hum again. Her tears welled up. The people who had just minutes before risen to their feet, clapping for her, now ignored her. The man with the wild white hair from the front row stepped toward Marian. Now she recognized him. It was the famous scientist and mathematician Albert Einstein. Einstein's smile stretched across his face. He raved about her performance. He went on to say that he thought she might be tired and invited her to stay in his extra room for the night. Stunned, Marian could barely utter, "Thank you." Albert picked up her suitcase and they left the theater together, Marian's heels clicking beside him. As they walked, Albert told her he was from Germany. He described how things had become very difficult for the Jewish people in Europe and how he had been forced to leave Germany. He told her the Nazis had taken his house away from him. He described how the Nazis had even burned his book on the theory of relativity at a book burning in the town square. Marian could understand how painful this must have been for him. She understood what it meant to be treated like an outsider in one's own country. A woman waved to Albert from her porch as they passed by. Marian waited as Albert stopped to chat. The woman was thanking Albert for his help with her son's math homework. Marian couldn't believe what she was hearing. The famous Einstein was helping his neighbor, an African American child, with his math homework. As they walked on, Albert told Marian how much his mother adored music and how she had signed him up for violin lessons when he was only 5. He told her that he fell in love with Mozart's sonatas and that he had almost become a musician instead of a scientist. Marian was surprised to see that Albert's home looked just like all the other houses in the neighborhood. She had thought it would be grander. He opened the door and invited her in. For many hours, Marian and Albert shared funny stories. They had coffee and cake. Then, although it was late, Marian asked Albert whether he still played the violin. Albert leaped from his seat and returned with his well-worn instrument. Propping it under his chin, he slid the bow across the strings. The soothing sound of the violin touched Marian and unleashed a song from deep inside her. As Albert played, Marian sang. It was the beginning of a friendship that would last long after that evening. Years later, when the world had changed, Marian returned to the McCarter Theater. This time, the theater owner greeted her graciously and asked if he could make a reservation for her at the Nassau Inn nearby. But Marian said, "No, thank you." She would be staying at the home of her friend Albert. Did you enjoy the story? I sure did. It really shows how friendships can start when people just open their hearts. If you want to learn more about Albert Einstein or Marian Anderson, there are lots of stories that go with it. Especially with Marian Anderson, there's a story called When Marian Sang, and it's by Pam Munoz Ryan. You might want to check that book out too. Have a wonderful day.